Okay, guys, we are live. Everyone who's tuning in, this is the latest episode of Power Hours with Power Players. And today we are very honored to have our guest, Seth Campbell, with us, who is one of Keller Williams' top agents, has one of the top teams here, top expansion teams, just a leader in all ways. So thank you, Seth, so much for being with Nick and I today. And for those of you, last time it was just me hosting this. Today we've got Nick Good, who's the leader of the Good Home team in Dallas, Texas. So thank you guys both for being here.
Honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So Seth, for those who haven't heard your story before, let's get started with what you did before getting into real estate, just so people kind of know your background and where you came from.
Yeah, well, I got started at McDonald's after school. Like, it was my first job after school. I was just going to save up enough money to buy a car, and then I was going to be out for sure. And I ended up staying there and climbing the ladder, got into leading the restaurants, got into management there, and really learned a lot about leadership from that experience. So I just did that, and I climbed the corporate ladder, became like a regional person for McDonald's. And then about 9 years ago, got my real estate license and did the famous dual career for a little bit.
How'd that go during the dual career?
Didn't Agwam. What's up? It went really well. It was it didn't go so well, but it was funny. Like the first Keller, so I went straight to Keller Williams, right? Because somebody said like, oh, check out the compensation, it's really good. And then when I went on their website back then, I saw that their value system was God, family, then business, and I was like, that aligns with who I am. So I just went straight to Keller Williams. And the funny part is I didn't know this whole deal about real estate and like recruiting. And, I came from the corporate world, right? So I walk in with a resume and I'm like, I want to convince these people to like hire me. And the team leader of the office, she was so good. She played it cool. And she's like, I think I'll take a shot on you, and did a little bit of a takeaway and brought me in. But what's funny during that first phase of dual career is we had a class back then called Camp 443, right? Which is probably, Ignite is probably the evolution of that, right? And it was like 17 people in my class. I'm taking the nighttime one for the dual career people. 17 people in class one. And by the last 4, it's just me and the instructor. Like literally just, I felt bad for the guy. He just came for me. And that's what it was like. It was like, oh my gosh, like what this industry is not what I thought.
Well, clearly it paid off for the instructor with all of your success. So coming for you is totally worth it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm super grateful for all the people then that really poured into me and helped me. It was tough. It was really, really tough at the beginning. And I essentially sold my first listing, gave away 100% of that money to a charity, and then just went all in.
Let me ask you to backtrack a little bit. When you were at McDonald's, you had a great career with them. So what was it that made you want to make this switch into real estate?
Yeah, I did have a good career with them, and I was really moving up the ladder fast, and had a lot of. The president of the company flew in to try to talk me out of it when I gave my notice. It was real special company for me, and I learned so much, and really had a good career path. But I always had this entrepreneurial spirit inside of me, and I always knew that one day it would come. I would either climb a corporate ladder and lead an entire company that's already established, or go build one. And I really felt the calling on my heart to move into real estate. Now, understand, like, this is as the whole show is getting ready to collapse. And it's all over the news, like, hey, there's a bubble, it's going to burst, and real estate's in trouble. And I had these high-level executives at McDonald's, like, flying in all the time trying to talk me out of leaving. And they're like, are you watching the news? Like, this whole real estate thing's going to blow up. Like, you're going into a firestorm. And I said, it's really, for me, a God thing. It's a calling, and, it's going to sound weird to you. And yet, like, I'm going in, and I just did.
That's amazing. So how was it in the beginning? You jumped in around that time with everything going down.
It was brutal. And I'm grateful for it now looking back, because I've heard these stories, like, the phone rings and, you get these people want to hire you and you make so much money, and like the phone didn't ring and people didn't want to hire me. I didn't make any money. And I was dying. And yet I was obedient to the class, right, of Keller Williams. I was going to these classes and I was doing my homework and grinding through it. Then I ended up, we didn't have like a productivity coaching program back then. It was like a mentor program in the office, and I get a mentor, and this guy really helped me a lot to get through and just pounding phones. So I'm FSBO and expired, making contacts every day, just grinding it out, really, really struggling. And I had a little bit of success and then nothing, a little bit. And I rode that roller coaster really bad. And at some point, a lot of people don't realize it, but there was points where it was really rough. So now I leave McDonald's, I walk away from all these benefits, all the security. I mean, I had a company car, I had everything set up, and I walk away from all of that. And newly married, my wife is totally wired different than me, like no risk, none of that. And she, bless her heart, she was real patient with me through that. And I'm sure it scared her to death. And yet it got so bad at one point, not a lot of people know, but I even started delivering newspapers. Like I started delivering newspapers. I remember having no money. I started delivering newspapers 7 days a week at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to report into the place 7 days a week, which just totally messes up any kind of rhythm you could have. To make like $120, $160 a week to be able to buy food. And it was brutal. That's in Massachusetts, right? And the weather certainly was not fun during that too. And it was bad. I remember putting a mortgage payment on a credit card once, and that's, mathematically, money-wise, that's like the beginning of the end, right? Because you're borrowing money to pay borrowed money. It was really rough. And I just, I stayed faithful to it. I stayed in activity. I, really put a lot of prayer into it and just kept going.
So Seth, what did your daily activity look like at that time?
So I would be doing, I would be calling FSBOs and expireds. So I'd wake up and I would pull expireds and for sell by owners. And before I even had money to invest in dialers, like I literally would just go find them and then try and search for one phone number at a time, and then I just start, and then go to their house and do that. I mean, it was just a total grind, but yet I learned scripts, and the mentor I got had built his business in the office on cold calling too. So that's certainly, he helped me a lot on that. And that became kind of what I did at that point. And like I said, once I got it, and I just stayed in class, and it was another class that helped me have another breakthrough also on top of that, that got me to a daily consistent, because I was still inconsistent, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny, when you look at the world of real estate, so much of it is about consistency, even over skill or anything like that. And the class and my mentor really brought in consistency in my life, and that really helped me.
So really, building on that next question, so your FSBOs and expireds were pretty much your main source of business in the beginning. Did that growth in that and those two lead sources lead you into a higher, or when did you feel that you were ready for that next step?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the deal: is like one thing I've done since I was a child is I've studied business, and I've been obsessed with business, and even like this morning, like I'm after I'm done with Bible time and working out, like I'm reading business books, and I just study obsessively business. This is going back since I was like 12 or 13 years old, and so I knew when I came into real estate that I was going to build a business, and it was always about being a business leader and a business owner to me, and I was mentally as a practitioner of real estate only so I could learn it well enough to then hire to it and build it. So that helps me in terms of understanding business, and yet at the time it hurt me in terms of patience and hiring. Like, so in other words, like I hired too early. So right away I hired my sister-in-law to be my first assistant real early, way back before I could afford her or really even needed her.
Yeah, and how many months were you in when you hired her?
Man, I might have been 7, 8 months in, 9 months in. And way too early, and yet in set her up though, and started following somewhat of the model and getting her going on covering a lot of those tasks and setting that up. And then I'm still grinding the phone. Now at this time in the industry, the bottom falls out and it collapses, right? Everything everybody warned me about collapsed. It was real quiet when I came in. My phone never rang, so I was hunting from day one, which I'm looking back real grateful that I learned had to learn those habits just to even survive. And then yet, and I was real competitive, right? And I'm tracking the other agents in the office and the amount of listings that they have. And there's a guy in the office that does REOs, right? Foreclosures, that's now taking more listings than me because, now we're in this REO market. And I'm like, I got to figure out what the heck these REOs are because, I can't let this guy take more listings than me. And so then I start adding in layers of prospecting banks and getting into that. And then got in front of that wave as it came in too. But even by the nature of FSBOs and expireds, I started getting essentially short sale clients, and I didn't know what to do. Like I'm new. Like you're talking to the guy that set listing appointments and didn't have a listing presentation. Like I remember like setting my first appointment and ran back to my mentor. I was like, it's like this afternoon. I don't know what to do. I know there's a listing consultation, but I don't even know what it is. Like you got to come with me.
So did your sister-in-law work out, or was that a learning process?
Yeah, well placed. She's still my sister. No, yeah, it did. Here's the deal. It worked out well for that phase, and then she had her first child and said like, I just want to stay home. So I don't know that she would have been the one to move forward, and yet at the time it fit. And right. So when she goes away, I'm back to just me.
Okay. Let me ask you real quick just about building it through FSBOs and expireds and then even the REO, because I know we probably have a lot of new agents watching. How long would you say was it that really took you to rev up your business to get some consistency with closings every month? I mean, because you talked about at first we started dual career and then we kind of went away from McDonald's, but business was pretty slow. So we were started delivering newspapers and doing what it took. And so you had the struggles a lot of new agents go to where you maybe have a little bit more time, but not as much money. So, how long did it take for that cash flow to get to something that was manageable, allowed you to stay in the business at least?
Well, and one thing I just want to say, be real clear. I still have struggles and failure nonstop. And I know you know that, but I just want people to hear that. Like, I don't know that there's a difference between new agents and me even today. I still have a ton of struggles. I'm just a guy that doesn't give up. Like I just keep going, and I won't stop. So the year one, I do probably about 21 transactions, and it's total roller coaster and feast and famine. And then I had no money, and my mentor's like, got to go to family reunion and borrow money if you have to go to it. And I'm like, I hate borrowing money, but I just did. And then I go to family reunion and totally changes everything. Like I'm going to these panels and I'm obsessively studying successful people. I remember sitting in panels, watching people who I'm really good friends with now on these panels and saying like, I want to be on there one day. And one thing that I've also been, as long as I can remember, is a pattern watcher. So I listen and I watch for the patterns of success. When I study about businesses, I read about 3 different businesses. I'm looking for the pattern, and I'm listening to panels, and this constant theme. There's a couple of key themes that jumped out to me that family reunion, which changed my consistency in year 2. And number 1 is they all had a MAPS coach, and number 2 is that they masterminded together. Like I kept hearing these things about masterminding together, and they kept blaming MAPS coaching and masterminding. So I come back and I was telling my OP that, and he's like, "You're gonna get a MAPS coach, you're gonna step up," and I'm like, "I don't have any money for that," and I had to borrow money to go to family reunion. I don't have money for $1,000 a month, and then finally it's like, well, listen, if you want to be a big player, you gotta do what big players do, and so I did it. I had like just over $1,000 in the bank total, and like including everything. And so I signed this MAPS contract, and I remember telling that first call, I was like, "Listen, dude, I know I just signed a year contract, but I can pay you for a month, and something's gonna happen. There's got to be a miracle." And I didn't tell my wife, right? She's Brazilian. She make me sleep outside. Yeah. And then I go and the guy's like puts me in hardcore activity, door knocking. So now I'm door knocking on top of FSBOs and expireds, on top of a couple of banks a day, and I door knock for sale. I call a for sale owner, and he's like, I'm gonna list today. I've had my own for 8 weeks. I'm gonna hire somebody today. I'll be there at 4. Anyway, I end up listing that house, selling it for cash. It was the highest home sold I had at the time. And the commission was exactly $12,000. So a MAPS contract for a year. And I've never stopped, right? I've never stopped. And I've just added, now I have multiple MAPS contracts on top of that. But I mean, it was tough. So then, so year two, let me tell you about year two real quick. Cause this is key. There's a lot of lessons inside of here that looking back, I'd love to share. So I do 21 or so transactions year one. Year two, I go to meet with my team leader at the time about my business planning, right? Did the business planning clinic, like how much money I want to make, how many deals I got to do. And I need to do like 63 deals or something weird like that to hit the number I wanted. And get this, my team leader tells me like, that's too big of a goal. You need to lower your goal. Market collapsed. You only did 20 deals last year. You're not jumping in from 20 to 60 in the middle of a collapse. Like my team, thank goodness the guy's not with us anymore. And I was he's like, you gotta change your goal, gotta change your goal, gotta change your goal. And I'm like, all right, dude, I'm gonna change my goal and change it to 100, forget you. And so I did. Now, fast forward, I'm pacing at like 70 and it's September or August or September. And I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave KW. So now I have some consistency, but I'm far away from my goal. And what's interesting is now I'm spending more money on marketing and things like that. So my profit is not there. So I have consistent monthly closings, but yet profit's not there. So I got from pure activity, I got to 20 deals a year. And that's what I think my natural ceiling is. You leave me to myself, I'm probably going to do 20 deals a year. And this year I'll sell like 1,500. We'll have 1,500. But me left to my own devices, I'll probably sell 20 because I'm going to go play Xbox or something. And then me with a coach, I got myself up to that, and then what happened is I'm blaming my brokerage. I'm ready to leave. I think I've outgrown KW, all that stuff. And the truth is, I had a great MAPS coach say, like, get to family reunion. The problem is you need a new set of friends. Your goal's 100. Nobody around you does 100 at this point. You don't have friends that do 100. You're trying to do it on your own. Come to Austin. I'm going to introduce you to a new set of friends. I did it. Met a bunch of incredible people. This special dinner we have, we're all friends still today. Created a mastermind group around that. And ended up doing 101 transactions that year. And so much. So there's just so many. I was blessed within 2 years, the first 2 years, to learn a lesson on coaching, to learn a lesson on masterminding, to learn a lesson on activities. There's so much pain. It was all through pain.
So year two, you talked, year one you did 20 and that was all through activity. So year two, we started spending a little bit more money. What about also the people surrounding you at this point as far as your team goes? Who is it?
I'm going back and forth. So it's like have an admin, don't have an admin, hire a buyer agent with no admin. Now I'm her admin and I'm terrible admin. I mean, it's just everything that you can imagine. And understand, like, I had to book. And one of my weaknesses is like I have it booked and I'm like, yeah, but I think I can be a little bit smarter than Gary on this page. And every time I ever did that, I lost money and time every time. So it's people say like, oh, I have to reset my whole team. I'm like, I think I did that 5 times in the first 3 years. I mean, I still feel like today we have partial reset. I mean, it's just like.
So would you say that with the growth from 20 to 101 and now 1,500, that we, like you said, you still have reset today, so it's continuing breaking through those barriers and not letting the reset take you down and dwell on that? That's it.
And by the way, like I'm still human, right? And I have I get rocked and I have, mindset challenges just like anybody else. Yet I swim against that stream daily and I invest time to swim. I still feel like, the battle in me and my mind is an upstream battle and it's every single day. And yet I won't give up because, there's a big mission to happen and a lot of people I care about. So I don't have the right to give up. I don't have the opportunity to give up.
And so with that, I mean, you took it, 20 to 101 is huge. then ultimately you seventh leveled your team, meaning, other people are running the appointments, and it's, essentially with the seventh level, it's still growing, and you can focus on other activities. Was expansion ever in your mind? So, I mean, was that coming from McDonald's? I mean, that's an expansion concept.
Yeah. So I lived the world of expansion and leadership around expansion in a deep way, coming from the world of McDonald's. So now I essentially had my team at a 6th level. I had 3 key hires, and really it was Recruit Select that helped me figure that out, because there was understand, even in those first 4 or 5 years, it was nothing but roller coaster. I mean, I went from 14 team members back down to 2. Like, I don't know, in 9 years, I may have had 15 teams already. Like, just understand that. And I'm totally okay with that, or versions of it, right? So anyway, in about 4 years, I'm at the 6th level, I'm bored, and I go through some trouble in my market center. I'm in Gary Keller's mastermind group, and have some conflict with my OP at the time. And long story short, I end up in front of Mark Willis, who's our CEO at the time. He puts me through Recruit Select, and he's like, I want to bring you into leadership in Keller Williams, and particularly given your background plus your board. So fast forward, I end up 7th level in my team. I moved to Maryland to become the regional director for Maryland DC region. That's on year 5 with Mike Brody, who's the regional owner here in Maryland DC. So I interview at different regions. Mike Brody and I choose each other, get into business with him. And he now becomes, my mentor, so to speak. Him and his friends are my new set of friends. And then I learn the leadership side of the brokerage world. And it is the other one. Now my team is over in Massachusetts, 350 miles away at 7th level, doing about 200 transactions a year.
So was there a reset in the 7th level? So you basically, your eyes on a regional director. So, hopefully your leadership on your team in Maryland is doing its job, right? Or still growing. What was that experience when you kind of left?
It was amazing. It was really cool. I thought I nailed it, and then it all falls apart.
Can you unhash that or explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. And essentially, I chose the wrong person, right? So of the 3 key leaders, I chose the one who I thought was the closest to being ready, not the one I really wanted to lead. The other one I really wanted to lead was too new. And I chose somebody, and it was working really well. And she was very qualified and did a good job. And then the thing that I missed on like 4-1 is looking at the personal side and getting into that. And her personal life started to fall apart. I started making some real questionable decisions in her personal life, and I'm far away now. I'm a regional director, like I'm full time in another role, and I'm sending people up there to help out, but it's not the same. And I just ended up needing to get out of business with her because some choices she was making. She's a really good person, just was making some different choices at the time, and then during that time, the other 2 leaders were out. So now, like, it's a total reset.
And so how did you handle both jobs? Like, what did you do to jump in? So, because right now, and still even in the Keller Williams world, that 7th level is still one of those coveted. I mean, expansions is the talk, but that 7th leveling is still that coveted spot. So what did you do to handle your regional director role at a high level and still make sure that your team doesn't fall apart?
Well, one of the things that Gary had taught me early on is this idea. And the way he put it, I'll never forget. He's like, Seth, you can have as many boxes as you want, these other companies even. You can have these other companies, and yet you can only live in one box. That's where most people do. And you've got to put a who inside of every other box, and then you lead the who. You just visit them. And doesn't matter how many cool ideas you have, doesn't matter how many awesome entrepreneurial spirit you have, you don't turn on another company unless you have a who for it. You just don't. You just sit on the idea and be in pain until you have a who for it. And so what I did is I was looking for a who. I didn't go up there and save it. I refused to do it because I'm living in a box of regional director, right? And so I put different who's up there, and then it kind of fledgling along. You know what I mean? It just kind of kept going and doing okay during that point. And it was a little bit of a roller coaster ride, yet I'm living in the Boston Regional Director. At the same time, what was interesting is before I moved away, I had drawn out this idea of expansion up there, a version of it, like how I could start putting buyers, and I started calling other offices, and I had mapped out this whole plan of how to expand. It just, to me, seemed like the next logical step. I put that all on the shelf to go be the regional director when I moved away. And then now expansion talk started up inside of KW. And some of my friends are talking about it or thinking about doing it. So I got a separate group of friends together from the other, from Gary Keller's group, some incredible partners. And we went around, and then we formed 5 doors at the time. So that was simultaneously. And because, like, same thing in Gary's rule, I put a who in charge of that on day one. So now I've got this thing up in Massachusetts that's it's riding a roller coaster. I'm focused inside of my Boston Regional Director, and I start up an expansion team, 5 doors, with some incredible partners and a who to run the daily operations.
So can you explain a little bit about the 5 doors process? I mean, that's kind of grown into, it's blown up, right?
Yeah, and by the way, it's been total pain along the way. Like if you hear one theme from me, it's like, just keep. Well, it's funny, if you really study success and successful people, I used to think that success was this strung together series of wins, and that was what success is, and it's not. Success, when it's just, you study it in anybody's life, it's a strung together series of failures that your bank account and your persistence outlast, right? And that's truly what success is. It's a strung together series of failure that my bank account and persistence will outlast. And the cool part is even if my bank account doesn't outlast it and my persistence does, then you can reset, right? We've seen people have bankruptcy and reset. So then it really becomes about persistence, right? And that, to me, is the number one key determiner of success is it comes down to persistence. So so this thing is going forward, and 5 doors has been, we didn't have a manual. There was no ESO. There was no expansion when we first started. And we just go out there and start figuring it out. And we have to pivot and learn just nonstop. And it's a bloodbath, and it's tough. And I remember, complaining to Gary, and every time I would talk about how hard it was, he would laugh and say, let me tell you a story that's 10 times worse than that, from his history. And then you start to learn, oh my gosh, that dude's walking the same. And he kept saying that all the time, I'm the same as you. You'll think that I'm different, but I'm the same as you. And it's oh my gosh, the early days of Keller Williams, it was worse than this. And what that guy outlived and persisted through, it's almost beyond words, right? And it's every time you come to him with a pain point, he's let me tell you a story about something 10 times worse than that. And it's so true. So in the early days, it was tough, and we would learn our lesson, and we lost so much money. And I remember saying to Gary too, hey, I lost $89,000 before I made $1, not profit, got $1 in return, first check. And he's like, did you lose it or did you invest it? And I'm like, oh, it's easy for you to say when it's, not your money, but yet it's a brilliant mindset inside of that. And yet, so we continued to invest and learn and pivot and fail through it. So, and fast forward, we didn't really kind of figure out what we were doing in expansion until about July of last year, 2016. And right now we're in year 4. So that was year 3.
And so what did that look like as the growth? So your daily activities, you're still your regional director. You had the who in place. So what was the who in order to build this, and ultimately at one time, now this is one of your main focuses, correct?
Well, yeah. So now, and at the same time, by the way, I started a market center.
That's right.
And also, but here's the deal. And some people look at me and say wow, it's this, you're doing all this simultaneous, and Gary tells us success is sequential, not simultaneous. But remember, I live in one box, and there's a who in every other box. That's the key. And the success of that organization is going to be dependent on that who, not dependent on me. If it's dependent on me, then we'd all be in trouble, right? And it's dependent on me to put the right who in that box, and that's what makes it work.
So would the who basically, you're basically the rainmaker of that, and the who reports to you. So basically, if we run it from a small team scale to what you have, it's basically, it flows up to you, correct? So, ultimately you're who makes sure that the agents or teams that they're hitting their projections, et cetera. What does that look like from a team perspective?
If you look at the organization now, what you'll see is myself and my partners mirror the model of the market center. So it's like OP and investor group, if you know the Keller Williams Market Center. So I would be like the OP. And then we've divided the company in two sides. Like Keller Williams has always had somebody to run the company and grow the company. And the person who runs the company is our Vice President of Operations, Jennifer Schiff. So she's essentially in charge of our hub. Now, one distinction we have between traditional expansion, our hub was not an original team. Like a lot of people, their hub is their first team and they spawn. We didn't do that because it started on the side, right? It was a start from scratch business. So our hub is not an actual team. It's a centralized servicing center built to service 750 teams. Right? It's like Keller Williams International. It's when you go to their office, it's not a market center. It's a centralized servicing office built to service 31 regions, 800 market centers, right? So we built that. So she's in charge of that. So inside of that is lead generation department, marketing, training, admin, contract to close, HR, accounting, all of that. So that's one half the company. So she runs the company itself. And then on the growth side is Raquel Quinnett out of Phoenix, and she oversees our regional folks, and we have 10 regions right now, and each region then goes and opens up locations inside of Keller Williams Market Centers, and we have 21 locations at this point.
Okay,
that's the structure. So I work with these two incredible people, Jennifer and Raquel, and they run the day-to-day operation, and then I visit them, right, inside the box.
And so your day-to-day what does that look like from today's perspective?
Well, so I recently retired as regional director, and so I'm no longer in that box, although I'm still kind of doing some transition stuff at this point, and helping out our region to make sure we don't lose momentum and doing whatever I can to support Mike Brody and the amazing people here. So my day-to-day is kind of in limbo at this point. There's some there and some in the new stuff, but essentially, as my schedule frees up a little bit more, I'm having more conversation with them, and I'm investing a good amount of time working on, future of real estate stuff and some technology plays that we're working on inside of 5 doors, and open another market center on top of that. So I have that's where most of my day-to-day looks like now. But if you look at my time, you're going to see interviewing for talent and leading those leaders. Like that's the bulk of my time.
Okay.
Let's ask you about, when you were RD and you opened a market center, you have incredible success story with that, with how much you grew the agents, how much you grew profit share, sales, everything. I think a lot of teams follow a model of building a team that is like a mini brokerage. So what helped you have success in those aspects, especially with hiring and finding talent, finding those leaders to put in place and bring in the organization or just your market center to get you that kind of success?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, the market center has been incredibly successful. Our first one was in Pikesville, Maryland. It got in the first 36 months, so our 3-year anniversary, we transmit with 401 agents. As far as we know, it's the fastest growing market center to 400 in the history of Keller Williams, and was number 2 in the world in recruiting on its second year, and number 1 in the world, walked the stage last year. And number 1 in profit share for all market centers that are in that launch category of Keller Williams. Right now it's in the top 50 in profit, and it's only 4 years old. And literally it's one answer. So your whole question about how do you bundle all of that success, the key thing is I hired an incredible person who followed the growth initiative. So it's back to the who. And so you wonder, like, why does this guy is so obsessed with teaching career visioning? Well, look what it's done to my life, right? I hired and partnered with this gentleman called Vlad Katz, who is one of the most incredible people on the planet. I mean, he's walked stage as top team leader. And then since then, we partnered with Tina Beliveau inside of our market center as a $50 million producer turned team leader. And now we're doing our second market center. So you just see the same pattern of keep going, hire incredible people, and plug them into a model. And so the success of the Market Center is all about Vlad, right? And our mutual commitment to follow the growth initiative because of the proven system that works.
That's incredible.
So Seth, with let's take it to a little bit of, and we got a little bit of time, but some wealth building. I mean, it's not necessarily building a team, but when you grow the team, hopefully it's a profitable venture. And what do you do with that excess money? So, I mean, I know that's one of your big motivations with 5 Doors as well, as it talks about wealth building activities. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that that is really on my heart is this idea, like when I think about my life and really rough childhood I grew up in, and kind of figuring my way through this stuff by the grace of God, and figuring some stuff out. Like I had a long ways to go for sure. And yet when I look at this, like what I look at is the model, systems, tools, the people, the training has not just changed my life, but changed my entire family tree. So for me, like it's about that. The Campbell family tree will totally be different than it ever was before me because of what's happened inside of my life. And so then I wake up and I say, like, well, my family tree's already changed, and I believe that's permanent. Now, like, what can we create these businesses that do that for others? So essentially, if you think about my life's mission, like it's just really about changing family trees. So if we go to the Market Centers, it's transforming lives through real estate, and 5 Doors building generational wealth. Like whatever company I'm in, is this idea of when you come here, it's not just about your life changing, but your entire family tree changing. And when we look at, Proverbs says a wise person leaves inheritance to their children's children. And that's really what I hang on to. And I was at this class. Let me just say this real quick. I was at this class, and it freaked me out because they said, like, hey, we all have 8 great-grandparents mathematically. Right? And raise your hand if you can name the first name of all 8. And it was like 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a couple of hands go up at the end. And I'm like, wow, that's just their first name. If you think about that, that's 2 generations ago. That's it. And so there's like a 95% chance that in 2 generations, they won't even remember our first name, let alone what we've done, who we are, what we learned, any of this stuff. Like, what if our great-grandparents have already figured all this stuff out and here we are relearning it? I mean, 2 generations. So there's this pattern that happens in human society where we're not carrying things forward. And why could we not create businesses that help interrupt that pattern? And that's through teaching, and it's through wealth building, and it's through all of this stuff, right? So essentially, 5 Doors now, I'm going to be talking about it. We're going to Vegas to have our last meeting of the year, our regional leadership meeting. I'll be announcing a couple of things on Friday around that. But essentially, what we're now doing is setting up a fund, a generational wealth fund, that we will we're looking at properties and purchasing properties together with our agents, with our admin, to help set them up as they build wealth, right? One of the challenges in our industry is that more wealth has been created in U.S. real estate than anything else in the history of the world, and we play inside that sport, yet our industry has trained us to step between these two assets, between an asset that transfers hands and collect a fee and build a business around collecting a fee. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my point is, it's the assets that are wealth, not the fee.
Right.
So if we're that close to it, couldn't we use our strength inside this industry to collect assets?
So is that your wealth building through real estate and residential, or are you looking? Is it a fund that will invest in others?
Yeah, it'll invest in everything. Yeah.
Okay.
In residential and commercial. Actually, we're looking at a commercial property right now, and that's. And so it's just this idea of like, let's pull some of the cash out of this industry, which is a high cash industry, and let's put it into assets that then can transfer on. Because we don't know if these businesses are going to be here. We don't know what's going to happen with the industry, but we do know is that the assets will endure, and that's what we can pass on. So if we can package assets plus mindset, plus abundance, plus training, plus thought process, and package that onto the next generation and the following generations, like we could actually make an impact to our children's children.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, and, love that.
And so with that, let's say that I'm a brand new agent, I'm licensed today. And I join, come to you or join one of your market centers, and I'm hearing you speak. What advice do you have for day one to make sure that, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, I can partake in the opportunities that you have?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I say number one at the beginning, it's about activity, right? And hopefully we all know that by now, is essentially when you start real estate, you've got two jobs. You've got the one that you see on TV where you get to show houses and walk through stuff, that one, the fun one. And then you got the other one, which is finding business, right? And that if you don't do the finding business job one, then you will lose job two. And so make all of your energy about job one, which is finding business. And the cool part is we're in a place where it's not hard to figure out how to do that or find out, right? Is go to class, go to activity, track your activities, be accountable, get accountability in your life, join productivity coaching, right? One of the challenges is those things cost money, right? Classes cost money. Yeah, productivity coaching, you're sharing your commission. And yet, so if you're in a scarcity mindset of I already don't have much, so I've got nothing else to cut this pie up, get rid of that mindset. The pie you can't cut up is zero, right? So go and get help and get support and invest in yourself. I always think that training and coaching I'm not investing in them, I'm investing in myself, right? And if I can't bet on myself, then man, I'm in trouble. Who can I bet on? So invest in yourself by getting coached, by plugging into training, paying for it, and then doing the activities, installing accountability around you to do the activity. Your whole first couple of years is just that.
Right.
Until you get it, towards the habit nature, right? Until it's consistent. And if you're not closing 2 or 3 transactions consistently because you're making 20 contacts consistently a day, then there's nothing else to focus on. Nothing. You don't need to learn hiring. You don't need to learn wealth building. You don't need to learn anything. Get that down. And then when you have that down, then you start to work your way in towards career visioning.
So the one thing.
Let me also ask you, especially with kind of your whole mission, I know we've had a lot of people ask us, what's your work-life balance like with all of these companies you've started? And is that different today than it was when you were brand new?
It is different. I have more time than I've ever had before, and people should hear that. Is that I used to believe this lie that as my world got bigger, or I had more businesses, or I had a bigger business, that would rob from my family time, and that one day I would have to choose my family or my business. And the truth is, when you get into business with talent, you can have both, right? Because when you get in business with amazing people, you get back minutes and you get back dollars. And I'm not really perfect at that yet. I'm committed to the mastery of that practice and getting in business with talent. So that is giving me more time. And how I do that, the funny part is you say work-life balance, and I have a trigger because today at 4:30 I'm going to teach how work-life balance is actually a myth, and to stop saying that. But
that's what we talk about.
Yeah, and it's actually so I won't go on that tangent too much, but it's just this idea of integration. In other words, I should not have a siloed life of here's my physical life, here's my spiritual life, here's my work life, here's my family life, and then attempt to, divvy out time between those. I want to have an integrated life. In other words, my family is as much part of my business as my business part of my family. When I go to work out, my kids are with me. I'm not by myself because it's not siloed, right? It's integrated. And all of that is integration. It's funny, actually, I have my bag right next to me. I actually do 411. You can see how beat up it is. I do 411. This is my 411. It's my future org chart. I didn't know you were going to ask me that. And so I follow 411. I have, 5 doors, market center, investment company, personal, financial, family, spiritual, physical, mental. And I predetermine what my goals are this year, then what they are this month, and then what I got to do this week. And it really is kind of the boring answer of following the model towards making sure that I do the most important things in each one of those categories. So I have on here dates with my children, dates with my wife. I take my kids out on dates every month, and that my kids, do these book reports and we talk about it. I mean, I put all that on there, and then I time block it on Sundays, and then do it.
So Seth, when I first met you, it was actually here in Plano, Texas. You were with Kenny Klaus talking to us. You mentioned something. I'm curious if it's true. Well, I mean, if you still do it, but you talked about you may have a meeting on your calendar for months, and if the day comes and you realize it's really not in your top 10 or top 20%, you'll cancel it. Is that something you still do to really manage your schedule and make the most of your time?
Why do you not do that?
I should do that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't I? It's live a life of priority.
I think that's fantastic. That's awesome.
So for the last 15 minutes here, we want to talk a little bit about the future of real estate, right? So there's a lot of talk about disruptors. There's a lot of talk, at least in our KW's world, of expansion. Now, I don't know if it's as big in the other brokerages or not. What is your thought process on it? I know you don't have that crystal ball, but what do you think is with disruptors, with expansion, et cetera?
Dude, you might be opening a can of worms. Here's what I see I see, number one, I'm concerned. Understand, like, I'm probably high on the skeptic meter, so you got to, be careful what I say. I do walk around paranoid. I have paranoia. And here's what I see is most of us are not paying attention to what's happening, and we're in for a bit of a rude awakening on some level. There's a great, I guess the best way I could put it is there's simultaneous things happen. Our industry is shifting, and simultaneous, like we're expecting a market shift, right? We've been expecting a market cycle shift because we're due for one for a while, and we could actually have a simultaneous, which is pretty rare, market cycle downshift simultaneous to a industry shift. And what I mean by an industry shift is, like the information age comes in and changes the industrial revolution, things like that, right? So we're looking at those two things happening at the same time, which is it's kind of crazy for those of us that are in the industry. And specific to the industry shift, there's a lot of things to watch in technology and disruption and disintermediation. And I think if I had to start big picture and then narrow down, I would start it with saying, in my opinion, there is a great devaluation happening between consumer and real estate agent. And by the way, that's always been there at some level, right? As a general statement, the consumer tends to feel like the real estate agent's overcompensated, and we defend our value, right? As a general statement, right? And what happens if you study disruption, essentially what happens is consumers' expectations are on the rise and going up this way, and an industry's deliverance stays down here. And that space in between what the consumer wants and the industry is giving them creates disruptors. Consumer wants access to listings and all this other stuff, and the industry says, no, we have our private MLS, we're not giving to you. And then Zillow comes in the space in between and meets the consumer, right? That's how disruption actually starts. So now there's a devaluation of the consumer to the realtor, and what happens is we can stay like defending our value, but yet other companies now that have nationwide access and big technology or venture capital dollars, like a Redfin, for example, or somebody can come in and say like, okay, we'll meet the consumer expectation on a 1% or 1.5% commission, things like that, right? So we'll meet you where you're at, consumer, and instead of the industry coming to flex to you, you got to watch for things like that. And they did a good job on Wall Street, and they're definitely one to watch. So we're gonna have to deal with them for the rest of our careers. That's set. And then what the question is like, okay, then what else happens after that? So between the consumer and consumer-facing technology. So when I look at even 5 Doors, the questions and the things that I'm working on are that, okay, based on that, what do we need to do differently? How can we respond to the future? How can we future-proof this company? Because I view 5 Doors as the space in between a brokerage and a team. We're not a team, we're not a brokerage, we're the space in between. And how do we play inside of that game effectively? And I think we're on to it. And I'm going to talk about that later and announce things later. But understand, like, that's where there's got to be consumer-facing technology that meets the consumer where they're at, that doesn't necessarily just stand on old school realtor commission and realtor value and stick on that, hoping the consumer just gives up what they want. that's piece number one. Piece number two is there's also a simultaneous devaluation, in my opinion, of the real estate agent and the brokerage, and that's also been a push and pull for the beginning of time, right? Pay my broker too much, and my broker, you don't give me enough, right? There's always been that tension for a long time, and Keller Williams has been amazing about this interdependency and kind of blowing that away. But now, as technology has made access to training, coaching, consulting, and all of that stuff at such an easy level, you see companies coming in that don't have layers of leadership, that have agents that can connect direct to mothership for lower cost with high value. And you see them attempting to fill a space that probably has been forming and is now forming stronger. And we could see the next, and I think what that means is the same answer the first one is, where the agent has to pivot to meet the consumer's needs a little bit. As brokerages, remember, I own them too and play in that space, is as brokerages, we're going to have to pivot our value proposition to be able to meet agents' new expectations instead of staying in the old world. And so both of those mean change. It means like the old world has to adjust to the new world that's here, or we sit back and get run over potentially by other companies that are coming in already meeting those expectations up front. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I'm tempted to keep it general without talking too much about other companies and give stuff away, but even inside of my world, so we obsess over that too. Like, how can we better, if we're just still delivering the old value proposition and talking about it, that we may be in trouble. It's not that the old one is not good. It's like, what else can we be talking about, and how flexible can we be in how we deliver brokerages services or compensate for them, and how we deliver agent services, compensate for them, to meet both of these people where they're at and be relevant in the new world.
And does the expansion growth that we're seeing, not just from you, but from others as well in the industry, is that a disruptor to brokerages, not necessarily from the technology side? Or do you see it more eventually that the individual agent is going to be less, and we're going to just have a few more of the power teams within the brokerages?
Yeah, here's what I think. I think that it looks like a disruptor on the surface, and it's maybe the key to it working as a brokerage. It can look just like a disruptor, much like teams. 30 years ago, teams looked like a disruption to a brokerage. They were a nightmare. They caused trouble. There was fights. There was compensation challenges. There was split issues, right? There still is in some brokerages, right, with teams. And yet now, fast forward, look at how valuable teams are to a brokerage. They're valuable for market share. They're valuable for recruiting. They're valuable for so much inside of a brokerage. So I think expansion looks like that on the surface. It looks like the teams 20 years ago. And when you look at it, it's like, wow, but there's turnover, more turnover than a normal team. But yeah, because it's half brokerage, half team. And there's this, there's that, there's all these issues. We got to get over that, and we got to get through it, because that actually becomes the future of the brokerage. And I really believe you're right. Is a lot of the long tail agent count is going to disappear. They're not going to be able to handle a lower commission environment. They're not going to be able to handle that. So I think the future looks like a lot less real estate agents that have to do a lot more transactions to make the same amount of money, which means consolidation. And you'll see expansion teams. So in other words, like, let's say crazy doomsday scenario is, well, there's a doomsday scenario, but it's not this. But let's say it's a rough scenario is, as a real estate agent, what I sell 25 houses now to make a semi-okay living, I'm going to need to sell 100 houses without being able to afford an admin. Like, before I can spend any money, I've got to be able to do 100 transactions. That's hard to do. But if I'm connected to an expansion team or to a brokerage that allows some of the services of processing, or have a technology that reduces the human capital needed to process that many transactions, then I can survive. But a lot of people aren't going to be able to make it through that cycle. That may be an extreme example, but it's a version of that headed our way. So you're going to see brokerages really need to embrace expansion teams, because that actually could become the lifeline to keep their agent count somewhat respectable, because we could easily be with half as many agents in a few years.
Absolutely. And then really for the last 5 minutes, I don't know, Elizabeth, if we can open up for questions or not, or people can type them in and we can try to answer them the last 5. But I mean,
out.
what are you, in the next, Friday's is it Friday that you're making the big announcement?
Well, Friday is our meeting, and then at the end, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the future and a 2018 vision speech for our company. It's the first time I've done that publicly. Yeah.
Are you okay with talking? What does 18 look like for 5 doors? Is that something you're not ready to talk about, or?
I can give you the general stuff,
yeah.
And then I think I might even stream it, so maybe you could watch it. But essentially, you're going to see us respond to those things I just said, because I'm obsessed with protecting our people. And what are we going to do about consumer-facing technology? What are we going to do about brokerage? What are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? I'm going to really dig into some of that at some level. And then you're going to see us get better at our growth system. We're still feeling our way through that and failing our way through our growth system. And you're going to see us also communicate more clearly to our brokerage partners that don't expect us to be a team and don't expect us to be a brokerage, expect us to be a little bit of both. So in other words, like our turnover is going to be worse than a team, but better than your brokerage. But there's some of that stuff inside of that. So you're going to see us get better at growth and recruiting. You're going to see us expand more. You're going to see us get better at communication, and you're going to see us start future-proofing to protect our people. And you're going to see us start building wealth with our people. We're going to start buying properties next year.
Love it.
Awesome. Okay, well, a lot of people have done some great shout outs for us. If you guys have questions, if you're catching this on the replay versus live, still go ahead and put your questions in the comment box, and we'll do our best even after live to see those as they come in and respond to them and answer them. Seth, is there anything our audience can do to really help, support you and all of your businesses?
Well, heck yeah. You heard me say that the key to everything for us is talent. And what I recognize is that there's incredibly talented individuals out there that somehow think that they're waiting for a tap on the shoulder, and the world's moving too fast for that. We're in a raise your hand society. Like, I've raised my hand for every opportunity I've gotten inside or outside of Keller Williams. So yourself or somebody else, anybody that you think is in alignment with our mission, I would say, don't reach out to me if you're not aligned with the mission. If it's just about shiny objects, like we're probably not a match. But if it's about the heartbeat of changing family trees and you're willing to go through incredible persistence and pain and endurance to do that, then raise your hand and let's talk about that, about your family tree and about anything like that. So for me, it always comes down to talent.
Is there a website they can find you on just for that?
I'll just give you, you can go to sethcampbell.com. You can go to, I think we even own raiseyourhand.com, because I said that once and somebody went and got that. Or I'll give you my email address. Like, my personal one that I read is seth@sethcampbell.com. Anybody can reach out to me. More than happy to talk to anybody. Or on Facebook.
Fantastic. Well, Seth, thanks again for joining us today. And like I said, if anyone has questions, please just throw them in the comments and we'll do our best to respond to them later. But yeah, thank you for being a part. Thank you for being so transparent and sharing with us. And stay tuned for the future episode of Power Hour with Power Players.
Thank you, Seth.
My pleasure. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.